people think that they eat well. People think that they eat enough protein. People think that they don't overeat or they don't undereat. And when you actually track what goes into your mouth, then you find out the truth. All right, we are back. What's happening, fam? We are here at the Hale Fitness Podcast. We're going to talk about food tracking today. I am Coach Jay, and I'm with...
Coach Rebecca. This is crazy. We're in different orders. Okay.
Yeah. And...
Coach Wendy.
Yeah.
And Coach Katie.
Yeah, okay. So we decided to mix up our locations today. And
Remix. Coaches on the track.
Yeah, so we've been also talking about what to title this podcast. So
there's actually no content.
Yeah.
Just talking about what to title it.
So we're gonna talk about tracking food today and why we ask every client to track food, and so that we can let go of the pressure. Why don't y'all just give your alternative titles that you thought you were gonna have for today's podcast? So go for it, Rebecca.
Oh, I had a couple.
Yeah.
One, which we were just talking about, is Coaches on the Track, and then the thumbnail is like a sick picture of us like posing like we're in a rap group. The other is like tracking your food, but like hunting. So there's like a scope zooming in on like prepped food though in the wilderness, as opposed to like.
Oh, that's pretty good. I like that.
It's so good. Yeah, like you're tracking.
Yeah,
it's great.
Or maybe like pointing at a phone with MyFitnessPal open. And,
Oh.
Yeah. All right. What was your idea, Wendy?
Why track?
Why track? Okay. Yeah, Wendy's clear.
Yay.
Yeah, that's good.
And then Katie had.
Well, I wanted track to stay on track.
Yeah.
See I did there?
Yeah. Yeah.
No. Can you explain?
The reason we wanted to talk about this today is because we often ask our clients to track their food. And even though, some of them, they're not going to be tracking forever, and it's kind of a pain in the ass when you first start, it just gives us so much information. And so we kind of wanted to talk through why we ask people to do that and why it might be beneficial for you to do that, right? So I want to start with Wendy.
Yeah.
So Wendy, you have, you've tracked your food on and off for years, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So at one point you had how many days in a row?
I had a year and a half.
Yeah.
I want to say, a year and a half.
Really? It wasn't 1,000? That's 2.5 years.
I don't remember, honestly. I know that I hit more than a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to give you like a X amount of days.
Yeah.
It
So
was more than a
you
year.
tracked your food for more than a year. And Rebecca,
Yes.
you've been tracking your food for a long time as well, right?
Yeah, on and off for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Most recently, I've been doing it for about a year now.
Yeah. And Katie, you recently started tracking your food.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So why are y'all tracking your food? I mean, you're in great shape. You're hitting your numbers at the gym. Why are you tracking your food?
For me, the number one thing that I love about tracking is it gets me feedback. It's also accountability for myself too as well. And also just a lot of feedback.
Yeah. You need accountability. Don't you just show up and do the thing?
Well, I mean, when I mean that, it's this is something that I can do long term in terms of my nutrition, right? I don't have to be on a diet, right? Or a specific diet for me to continue to make progress or maintenance, right?
Yeah.
So it's just something that I can see myself do long term, and it works for me.
Yeah. Okay, so you're tracking your food primarily to hold yourself accountable,
Right?
So you're not going too far off track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Why have you been tracking your food on and off?
So originally, it was to make sure I was getting enough protein, and then just to stay within specific macros because I was cutting weight for weightlifting, so there were specific targets. Now it's a good reminder for me, specifically on days where I don't eat the same thing that I do every day, because most days, like Monday through Friday, I eat the same thing. I know exactly what it is. So tracking's fairly easy. I just copy what I did.
Yeah.
But on the weekends, it's easy to kind of stress out about oh, my 8-off plan and I'm probably overeating. And so I just log it. And a lot of times I undereat those days. So it kind of gives me peace of mind that, like, you can still eat something that isn't prepped or whatever and you're fine.
Yeah.
So I like just having that data and not like judging myself for it and then going back to what I normally do the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. Katie, why have you started tracking food recently?
I started tracking in response to a problem, which was I was trying to get stronger and I wasn't. And so I had a hunch that it was more related to nutrition and recovery than it was related to the amount of training I was doing. So I wanted to just see, like, okay, I have some old numbers that my coach gave me, like, how close am I to them? And it was actually super illuminating, like, because if I were just to operate of my own volition, I wouldn't get that close to, like, total calorie numbers or protein numbers. But what I found is that since doing it, I've been more proactive during the day of, like, if I have making a choice between I have 5 minutes, I could do a quick thing on my computer or whatnot, or I could go, like, heat up some oats or something like that. Like, I'm more likely to choose, no, I'm going to, like, be proactive with my food and make that choice.
Yeah. So you were under eating.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things, have you ever heard this, this quote? I think it was like some business management guy. He was talking about, he said, what gets measured gets managed. Have you ever heard that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. No? Yeah. So it was like one of the original, trainings that people used to do for corporate, and I forget the guy's name, but basically he was saying that if you're not measuring something, then you won't take any action to change it. And one of the reasons why I think it's really important for people to track is not because we need them to do one thing or the other, but it's like just bringing awareness to what you're doing. People think that they eat well. People think that they eat enough protein. People think that they don't overeat or they don't undereat. And when you actually track what goes into your mouth, then you find out the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is one of the things we've been asking everybody to do is to track their food in some way or another, right? And what we found is it's actually really hard for people to do for the first couple of weeks. Right. So we have a client that we've been working with where we said, hey, we need you to track and follow these rules, but make sure you're tracking every day for 10 days.
Yeah.
And we're now on our sort of 4th or 5th iteration of 10 days because it's just really difficult to get into a habit of making sure that you're doing it.
Right.
But we've noticed some things that have changed as they've gotten better with the tracking, right? Yeah. So what have you noticed just working with this client?
This client is prioritizing protein at the beginning of the day, right? So because this client has, targets, right? So now that client has it in their head, like, okay, so I need to hit X amount of protein. That means that I have to, eat like an egg or, whatever, or a protein shake in order for me to start the day so I can hit that number, right, that day. Yeah. So now this client is planning, right, because now they have goals, right?
Yep.
And then, and now they start to plan a day before for the next following day, right? Versus before when we first started, it was just, I'll just see how the day goes. And that, that wouldn't really quite go well.
Yeah. So this awareness kind of change some of their behavior. Yeah. And we're starting to notice the difference sort of in the gym and just in their mood, their sleep, their energy, that kind of thing. And we haven't even hit all the targets yet. Right. Right. So it's just this, it's probably been 4 or 5 weeks. Just this 4 or 5 weeks, it's like a lot of things have improved just through tracking. Yeah. So I want to ask, like, all of you have been doing this for a while, and it's kind of a pain in the ass, right? How do you get over that sort of initial hump of the first 2 weeks of tracking? How do you make it easier?
Eat the same thing.
So first of all, like, what are you using for tracking?
I use my FitnessPal.
Yeah.
I use the app called Macros first. It's similar to my FitnessPal, but it's simpler for me to track.
Yeah. And you're using my FitnessPal. Yeah, I've used a couple other ones. I'm trying out one called Chronometer now because we can pull data out a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And what I found is that like just using the app can be difficult, right?
Yeah.
Just like opening up, figuring out where to put stuff. I mean, it's kind of a steep learning curve to do it.
Yeah. And then there's like grams versus ounces, right? And
Totally.
then all that stuff is like what, and then when you search chicken breast, there's like 1,000 chicken breast options. So which one do I go with, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a pain in the ass.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that you would recommend to people when they start doing this to make it easier?
So what I typically do, and I find this super helpful, is for the first week, just input stuff. Like, don't worry about like the precise, quantity, right? Or the right, whatever. Just log it.
Yeah.
Log your food and just do your best to guess which whenever, is right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're able to do that for a whole entire week and you pretty much log every single thing that you put in your mouth, that's a win. We're there, right?
Yeah.
So you have that routine going on of pulling your phone out, boom, logging in your food.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to start, but just logging your food. No matter, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just log your food.
Yep. And there was another one that we have people use where they just take pictures of their food, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like, so for someone who's like really resistant, but I still want to get a feel of like, what are they eating? Yeah, 8 is great. We use an app called 8 where all you're doing is snapping a photo of your food. And what's cool is that like, I've found that people have a lot of similar like success doing something just as simple as tracking with photos than they do getting real specific about the grams and ounces.
Yeah.
Because it's just that same like attention drawing or awareness drawing, and then questioning a little bit of like, is this something I want to take a picture of or not?
Yeah. Yeah. Just a little pattern interrupt before something goes in your mouth.
That's exactly
just,
right.
Like, taking that picture.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would say that's actually a great tip. Like, don't worry about the quantities because then you don't have to actually measure anything.
Yeah.
You just say, I'm eating, 3 servings of chicken or whatever. Yeah. And just pick the first one. So now you have some sort of history of the food. Yeah. And what's interesting when you search stuff on one of those systems, I've had times where I've logged food the wrong way for like months and it didn't make that big of a difference.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So it's just like you can log, chicken thigh instead of chicken breast. And, it's like it doesn't make that big of a difference right now. There's a big difference between cake and an apple.
Right.
But
Oops, picked an apple.
Yeah, that's right.
But it doesn't make such a huge difference. So getting in the practice of doing it would be the starting point.
Yeah.
Any other kind of tips you would give for people that are tracking in the first 2 weeks?
The technology barrier was a big one for me. Like, I felt really uncomfortable, like, finding food and like, I thought I was going to have to log each individual thing when I started. And one of the barriers was, like, using the free version of the app was kind of trash because you couldn't really specify your macronutrients. You were trying to do these calculations based all on percentages. And so once I made that move and just got the premium version, honestly, it became so much easier because you just copy and paste one meal from another. You could also, I found as like a useful feature is like if I make a simple recipe, like I made spaghetti sauce this weekend. It was like ground beef, some pepperoni, like a jar of rouse and mushrooms or whatnot.
Yeah.
And it was like all I had to do was input that as one recipe, choose how many servings it was going to be, like 6 for the week.
Yeah.
And that was it. And now every day all I have to do is just choose that recipe and it's super easy versus like trying to log all those things every day.
Yeah.
So there have been like little tricks that I've learned that actually have made it not even take that much time. And honestly, I don't even pull my phone out at every meal. I wait till the end of the day most of the time if I'm eating the same thing that I ate the day before and just like do it fast that way.
Yeah.
And I'll try to do it before bed. So if there's like, oh shoot, I need 10 more grams of protein or something, I can have a half a protein shake or something like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I do the same thing. It's like I'll forget to log lunch, whatever, but it's the same thing every day. So it's just, let's make sure that's been. But when you're starting out, you want to make sure you log that stuff. So, I mean, another thing that could make it easier is, start without the technology. Just start by actually writing down your food.
Right.
Like write it down before you get it. And then you can go through and like enter it in later if you want to, or not even enter it in.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the act of bringing awarenness really helps. And then once you can kind of see like, oh, this is how much protein is in this thing and that, then you can do all these calculations on your own. These apps are supposed to make it easier, but if it's hard to find stuff, then it's not worth it. Yeah. So some sort of like just logging the thing, writing it down, taking a picture would be a great place to start, right? So any other tips for someone getting started?
I also tell people if you pre-log up a meal, so let's say like breakfast, right? You know exactly what you're going to have for breakfast. Pre-log that the day before, right? So you know for a fact you'll have oatmeal, eggs, and some yogurt. Bam, just put that in there so you don't have to worry about logging that specific meal. So just to save you time, right, throughout the day.
Yeah.
I tell people just do the whole entire day. Even if the days change it, like you're swapping chicken with salmon, just swap it, right?
Yeah.
So that way you don't like go through that day and like, crap, I forgot to log my food. You have something in there. And if you happen to change a food, then you can just swap it.
Yeah.
So that was super helpful too, especially for me when I started tracking.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really good. I do that too. Sometimes for the same reason why you do it is like, if I log everything, then I'm like, oh, I've got an extra 10 grams of protein. I can have a little more of this or that during the day.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I find is it's going to be painful. Just do all the pain at once. It's just like, make it happen for 2 weeks. Right? It's just like, I do think there is a certain level of, we kind of put things off thinking they're too hard, but it really just takes like 30 to 60 minutes of focused effort, and then you kind of figure it out.
Yeah,
you know, if
that's
you can,
really true.
if you can figure out like how to use a phone, then you can log your food, right? It just might take you 30 to 60 minutes.
I always tell people too, do you have a Facebook page or an Instagram, account? Yes. Okay. You can figure it out.
Yeah.
Like you have no excuse.
Yeah. Have you figured out how to post a picture on Instagram?
Yeah.
You're fine. Yeah. But I think part of it is it's like, it feels hard, and it's also something that people kind of low-key don't want to do. And so it's just like, oh God, I don't want to go through all of this.
Yeah.
But I mean, how much time, now that you are all doing it, how much time do you spend every day logging your food?
No time for me.
I keep getting reminders by MyFitnessPal, like you forgot to log breakfast,
right.
you forgot to log lunch, and then I'm like, oh, that's right, I have to do it. It takes like 5 seconds. Because again, I eat the same thing every day.
Yeah. So maybe less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Yeah, I didn't even know it did that. I think I turned off all the notifications.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's really not that hard. We actually have a video explaining kind of how to do it. It's really not that hard, and if you do it for 10 days, then it's not too bad. Yeah. So we've gotten to this. Someone started logging the food, they got it in there, and then you might sort of dial it up by saying, okay, let's get you a food scale and start weighing the food. And it's funny, I hear this, I haven't heard this from Mike. It's like, oh my God, this is like too much work to weigh and measure your food. It's actually not that hard either. Yeah, especially if you do food prep, because you can kind of do it ahead of time. Do you struggle to sort of weigh and measure your food, or?
Nope.
No. What about you, Katie?
Not anymore, no. But I think there's a learning curve of like ounces or grams, and what do you choose? And like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And also like it was funny because just this week I was having this dilemma of like I had batch prepped some stuff, and then I always question like, do I just put it in the fridge from there and like scoop it out, day by day? And it's like, I've done that before, but then you get to the end and you have some random like 3 ounces that you just end up throwing away because it's not. Anyway, so I like did the smart way this time, which was like I had all my Tupperware out and I lit it in. And that's nice because then it makes like you don't have to every day go and adjust the numbers. So it's like there's something. I get that is not for everybody. Like not everybody wants to eat the same thing 5 days a week, and you don't have to. But from like a weighing and measuring perspective, I found it easier just to do it all at once, basically the day that I prep.
Yeah.
And it's way easier.
Yeah. I do the same. And actually, like, I've done the thing where you just cook it and you put it in big pots.
Yeah.
And like you end up not eating it all. Like it's not that you have a little bit left, but you just kind of like, you open the fridge and you're just like, oh God, I got to scoop it. I got to grab this spoon and that spoon, versus just like I grab the thing and put it in the microwave.
Totally.
Right? It's just like that little bit of friction actually means that you won't follow through on the thing sometimes, right? So we ask everybody to log their food primarily for awareness, and once you kind of have that awareness, then we start adding in things. It's just like, okay, let's try to get more protein, let's try to get more whatever. And we have found that if people can get over the hump of logging their food and then weighing and measuring their food, it's pretty much like smooth sailing from there, right? Yeah.
Oftentimes,
Yeah. And so it's one of those kind of keystone things. I mean, we said this a while back. if I can just get you to pay attention to what you're eating, you will gain or lose weight depending on what you actually want.
Right.
It's the people that won't actually log that we struggle with the most.
Yeah.
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 It's very rare that people will just log all their food and then say, oh, well, I ate 5,000 calories a day, instead of the 2,500 you told me to, coach.
Right.
Right. Every so often we have people that undereat. But
Yeah. The other cool thing about tracking food, and I've done this a few times when I go on vacation. There's some vacations I don't track at all. Just I don't really care about tracking. I just want to enjoy myself.
Yeah.
But there's some where I'm just like, okay, I actually do want to do something, right, when I'm out there.
Yeah.
And usually the one that I always go to is my protein, like keeping up with my protein. Because, everywhere you go, you will find some sort of protein, right?
Yeah.
I can't think of a place where you won't find, like, protein.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that I sometimes do on vacation. I just track my protein. And there has been sometimes too where I track my food, but I don't care. Like, I'm not going to beat myself up if I go over my calories. But it's more so like for me, because I had like a thing going on. And I think it happened when I was going on like the 1 year or like that time that I was like nonstop tracking.
Yeah.
It was super helpful because I noticed that because I've been tracking for so long, now I tend to lean towards foods that are higher on protein, or I just like think about, oh, what's this meal? Does it have protein?
Yeah.
And not caring what the rest of the meal has, right? But like what protein does it have?
Yeah.
So I find that super helpful sometimes when people want to be somewhat active, like proactive with their nutrition when they're on vacation. And then it makes you feel good when you come back.
Yeah.
Like you're proud about yourself that you did something. You enjoy yourself, and then at the same time, you did something too when you were out there.
Yeah. So it's not that hard to track
No.
when you're on vacation.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
like, you put it in there.
Yeah, I just didn't even care like how much, I don't know, like how much chicharron I had that day. I just put that, the thing that I had, and didn't really care how much.
Yeah. It is also an interesting exercise in like facing like, wow, I really did eat that much.
Yeah.
Or, or have that many like cocktails or whatever.
Yeah.
Because like that also brings some awareness.
Right.
It's like, wow, no wonder I feel like
Yeah.
crap at the end of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time I tracked my food for a birthday that I had. It was pretty crazy, the amount of calories that I had that day. And the next day I came to work out. But this was when I was in my early 20s, so I can't do that right now. But I remember I had like so many cocktails, and I had so much German chocolate cake that day. And I was like, oh. But I seemed to be okay the next day.
Yeah.
You survived.
Yeah. You're so old now. You can't handle it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is the reason I wanted to talk about this is whenever anyone asks me a question about nutrition, if I'm going to follow up at all, the first thing I ask them is to send me 3 days of food. And I will say about half the people, I never hear from them again. Right? But when I do hear from them, it's like, okay, now we can take a look at your food and what you're eating and say, okay, these are the adjustments that we need to make. And so if you're serious about actually getting results in the gym, you have to track your food, right? It's really not optional,
Yeah.
right? Because you can say all that you want, but if you don't have what you want, if you don't have the results, then you're actually not eating the right things. You're actually, whatever plan you're following is not working for you,
Right.
right? And so the first step to creating a better plan is tracking what you're doing, right? So yeah. This whole thing is just a pitch for you to track your food.
But I will say too, like, just as I think for most people that is the case. I think there's like a caveat, and having worked with a lot of people with disordered eating or like histories of eating disorders, there's a little bit of an exception when it comes to like and this would be more related to their goal. Like I've worked with clients whose goal is to improve their relationship with food. And sometimes that actually comes down to not tracking and not being as like obsessive or particular, at least for a period of time. And so like what's interesting too is that like sometimes those goals will change or sometimes they will evolve. So like working with people who have histories of disordered eating where tracking has actually sent them down this really unhealthy road, sometimes then later in life are like, well, I do want to actually change my body in some way. I want to do it in a healthier way, but the only way I know how is this like unhealthy way. And I would actually even put myself in that camp. I think some of my skepticism around tracking was like, well, when I did this in the past, it actually went down this really terrible road where it became like this obsessive thing. I thought about nothing else. I went to the hospital, all these things. So it's like in my mind, that's my association. And it was really refreshing to know that I could track and not go down some crazy person rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And some people find that. And some people actually, I find that like they can make a lot of progress just from like if tracking is like one of the like keystone habits for someone who's not tracking, it's like slowing down oftentimes is like a keystone habit. If you can just slow your meal down and follow your own hunger and satisfaction signals, actually a lot of people can make a lot of progress that way.
Yeah.
So it's like if the focus is whole foods, like foods that are grown from the ground, and then like
that's a big
slowing
caveat.
down, yeah. But like a lot of people who have diets where they're eating a lot of processed food, and it's harder to trust those hunger and satisfaction signals, like that transition to eating more whole foods coupled with following your own hunger and satisfaction signals. Like I've seen it like over and over and over again, get people like really great results, like in the gym and around their body composition. Sometimes it's worth like being more specific than that, or people reach a point where they want to be more specific than that, but at least they have this like, one trap that I worry about some people getting into when they track is this sense of like, I'm only like on my plan if I'm tracking. And if I'm not tracking, then it's like all hell breaks loose. And they don't necessarily have the skills to like stay on plan when they're not tracking, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So so now you're kind of getting into this realm of like, all of that stuff you said about, someone with a history of eating disorders.
Right.
If they are eating whole foods and they're following their hunger cues, then like, great, you can achieve some of the same things. You could say that for people without eating disorders as well.
Totally.
But, that's kind of a different approach, right? It's just like, okay, instead of you tracking everything, I only want you to eat these foods, right? And that's like, that works as well. And I've done that myself, and we've had clients that have done that.
Yeah.
But most people, well, I would say most people, a lot of people, they want to have cake every so often. They want to have all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And that just really throws off your hunger signals.
Totally.
And so then it becomes like, well, how much cake can I eat on my birthday?
Well, and too, like, and I've worked with people who like, they have to go through this. It's like they've restricted for so long. If I ask them to eat only whole foods, it's not going to work out for them. They're going to binge. Yeah. So it's like, I've worked with people where it's like, actually, you have to allow everything into your diet. Like you're going to gain weight. Yeah. But unless you do that process first, this cycle is just going to continue. Yeah. So like, there's that also.
Yeah. The other thing is, one of the dangers in using something like MyFitnessPal is you kind of described this like, and then it becomes this game of like, okay, I'm going to try to hit my calories or underneath my calories. And then you punch in, like, it'll ask you like, how much do you want to weigh by what time? And then it'll say, eat, no calories. And so then, a lot of times we get people that come in, they're like, oh yeah, I'm eating 1,200 calories a day. And it's like, that's not even close to as much as we need you to eat. Right. And so we're saying track the food, not take the recommendations from an app that does not know you and does not know what your requirements are, right? That's why we're here as coaches.
And I love this idea of like tracking as a spectrum too, whereas like on one hand you're snapping photos or you're writing in a journal. Yeah. On the other hand, like I've got folks right now who are just checking a box. Did I have protein 3 times a day and vegetables 3 times a day? Like, yep, check the box or whatnot. Super simple, super easy. And then the full, other like extreme, you could call it, you are tracking every gram and every ounce and everything. So it's like, when we say tracking, we're also like referring to this whole spectrum of tracking.
Yeah, it's awareness.
That's it.
Right? And it's like, when we say that we've been tracking, none of us hit our numbers every single day.
No.
Yeah. Right?
No.
None of us are perfect with it.
Yeah.
And, we're not kind of obsessing over that. It's like, oh, I didn't quite get to my protein number, or, well, I usually get to the protein number. But I didn't quite get to the calorie number I wanted. Maybe I had more or less or whatever. But it's just like the awareness of like, well, no wonder I feel weak. I've been consistently eating 400 calories less for the last week.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That brings some awareness. That's why I didn't feel like I could lift as much today.
Yeah, I found that tracking for me, and this is just personally for me, when I don't get scared seeing that number anymore, like it was before when I first started tracking, right? So like whenever I would, let's just say I would go off my numbers and I would just track, I would feel super guilty about seeing those calories, right? But then this took time for me to get where I'm at right now. So now, like seeing, you know, I had a cake this weekend, right? Great, I'm just going to log it. I don't feel guilty, or I don't feel like a certain way for me to, you know, because I had that thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I even like reward myself for going, you know, Monday through Friday, I hit all my macros. Great, I'm going to have myself a donut on Saturday and I'm going to log it, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm like in a space with, I guess, my relationship with food that any food that I see, I don't stop myself from having it, right? And if I do, I don't beat myself up,
Yeah.
right? As much as I did at the beginning. Because at the beginning, that number was scary for me. It was like, oh my God, I'm like, you know, even said the F word, I'm this, I'm that. Like just gave myself like so much crap for doing that.
Yeah.
And, you know, at the time I was working with Tina and, you know, me and Tina, we worked through that and we approach it different ways. There was sometimes that she will tell me, okay, you're tracking Monday through Friday, Saturday and Sunday, don't track, right? And I just want you to have whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right? So you're not seeing that number.
Yeah.
But again, that, you know, took time for me to come where I'm, you know, where I'm at right now. So now I log my food and I don't feel a certain way about it.
Yeah. 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 I mean, this is another part is like, if there weren't sort of hyper palatable foods that, you know, have an excess of calories and less vitamins and minerals, none of us would have to track.
Yeah.
Right? If we were just eating food that came from the earth, like we would just have as much as we needed to have to support ourselves. But because of the environment, that is it. And then we have to figure out how to adjust to that environment. And that's one of the ways. We were talking about this earlier. It's like, after you've been doing this for long enough and you've seen like ups and downs, it's like, oh, I've gained a little weight, I've lost a little weight, I've been in great shape, I've been in terrible shape. One of the things that's great about tracking is you can go, oh yeah, March of 2020. Well, actually, bad time. But like, let's say March of 1999. I was in amazing shape. What was I eating then?
I was a senior in high school. I was eating everything. Everything.
March of 2019. How about that? All right, and then you go look back and you're like, oh, this is the macro ratio I was eating.
Yeah.
Right, and oh, I did that for like 3 straight months. Like,
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, that's why I was hitting those numbers. And it's helpful to kind of look back on that stuff too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great point. Like part of this is when you've done this for long enough, nothing really matters that much.
Nope.
You don't put too much focus on a bad workout or like missing your macros or
No.
whatever. And that's one of the things that's the hardest for us to communicate to clients is just like, look, like this is a process.
Yeah.
You know, you can do a lot in 8 weeks, but you might not. You know, it might actually take you 8 months.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, but you're still going to be around
Yeah.
like, you know, another 8 months from now and then 8 years from now. It's like, let's actually create a situation where you feel comfortable on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's finding that balance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you would both say like, you haven't always tracked every day. Neither
No.
have I.
Yeah,
Right.
no.
And so there'll be times where it's like, okay, fine, things are fine. And then maybe they go a little bit south, right? You don't like what you see in the mirror. You don't like how you perform. Then you go through a period of tracking for 2 weeks. Oh, right. I'm not eating enough protein.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it's a tool that you can kind of use for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's one of our most used tools here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is, you know, just bringing awareness to what you're eating.
I really liked during this nutrition challenge that we ran too, folks were tracking steps. And that was actually, there was so much interesting information that came from that too. And people were very surprised by like, oh, I thought I walked, I mean, like, shoot, I only walked 800 steps today. Like, what was I doing?
Yeah, people walk like 2,000-3,000 steps if they work at home. They just
That's
don't do
right.
anything.
You just don't
Yeah.
do it. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a cool, like, oh, right, I'm not going to get this target if it's a 4,000 or a 6,000 or 8,000 step target unless I'm proactive about going on a walk at lunch or whatnot. So I kind of like that because it's one thing to say, hey, make time to walk at lunch.
Yeah.
And then nobody does it. And it's another to say, like, if you want to lose X weight, like, it's almost imperative that you walk 6,000 to 8,000 steps a day. And then it's like, oh, how am I going to, okay, I guess I'm walking at lunch,
Yeah.
right? But it's like having something to
Yeah.
shoot for, I've found has been really helpful for people.
Yeah, and you know, just again with that tracking, it's like it's almost like you're steering that elephant. You know,
Yeah.
that like you know, you've heard of the elephant and the rider. No, yeah, okay. So it's like the idea is like if you're riding an elephant, you can't really control the elephant.
Yeah.
You can influence it slightly, right? You can kind of get it to turn left or turn right or whatever. And it's like more of a suggestion. The elephant is going to do what it wants. That's sort of like your subconscious brain. Like you're going to do what you want to do, but you make these little suggestions and you make some, you have some like awareness or whatever. And eventually you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to walk at lunch because you've been tracking this thing and you want to achieve this goal. Right. And, or, oh, I'm going to have like chicken for lunch instead of just a bagel or whatever, because I'm trying to hit my protein goal because I'm now tracking the goal.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's a way to kind of steer that elephant and makes all these subtle changes that we saw with this client. Is just like all these changes that we've been asking them to do. And it's just the tracking that's actually made it happen.
Right.
Yeah. So love it.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else to add on tracking?
No.
All right. It's hot as hell in
No
here.
coon
It
dog
is.
references.
I'm like sweating.
Yeah,
I'm
we're
like
all just sweating.
Sliding on this chair.
All right, this is the hottest day of the year so far. All right, well, we'll see y'all next time. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like this episode, we've got plenty of others. Go check out this one over here.